And we should be live. Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of What Lies Beneath Ask Me Anything. And today with me is Guljeet Nagpaul, the CPO of ACCELQ. Now, welcome to the show, Guljeet.
Thank you, Bridge. Good to be here.
I hope the audience can hear me. Can you just confirm if you guys can hear us? Because there's normally a delay of 10, 15 seconds between StreamYard and YouTube. So let's see how that comes up. I can see Kshitij Josli already there in the crowd. All right, great. All right. So, fascinating thing. I mean, we have been reading so much about low code, no code tools. And yesterday, in fact, day before yesterday, I was in a roundtable, and we were talking about automation. And obviously, if you're talking about automation in the modern day, test automation in the modern day, you cannot escape the topic of low code, no code tools. So people started talking about it. And today we are with Guljeet, who is the CPO of ACCELQ, which is quite a promising tool. So before I ask you anything about ACCELQ, Guljeet, I would like to know about your story. How did you begin your journey, and what brought you here?
Sure, Bridge. Thanks for having me, and I'm excited to chat in this format. I think it's a great format, not presentation and webinar like, which can kind of get really boring to
No,
the
you can present if you want to.
For sure, for sure. I don't intend to just keep talking. I do intend to show action. That's kind of what we are all about, also. So that's good. It's a mix of that. So to answer your question, I come from a long drawn background of test automation. I used to be part of Mercury. Back when we first released Windrunner, not many participants today would even know probably about Windrunner. You do? Okay.
The gray hair should tell you that.
Wonderful. So, we were the first, so-called back in those days, we used to call it scriptless, right?
Yes.
First scriptless automation tool in the market. And the idea was, from overall kind of process area standpoint, the idea was to simplify automation, right? To bring in automation in testing, as you can imagine, right? And at one point, Mercury owned pretty much 70 plus percent of the market share. Pretty much ruled the market from that standpoint. We had a suite of tools by the end of it, and HP acquired us and so on, right? And there was an onset of scriptless tools which had triggered back then also. That was kind of the first the first phase of the tools coming out, right? In the last many years, we've seen an onslaught of open source frameworks, right? May it be Selenium, Cypress, or what have you, right? Both in the performance world, in the functional world, pretty much across the board, right? And not just in testing, we've seen open source come up even across the board. It actually started out from development and then kind of crept into testing and so on, right? So that's a little background, right? Kind of been there, seen that on all those tools, and have a lot of background in kind of various areas on at the ground level what the issues have been, right? Both for testers, test engineers, as well as for the businesses to really take value out of test automation. It had been a struggle in both worlds, and that's kind of the backstory behind what led to ACCELQ.
Fantastic. And when we talk about when I talk to people, generally about test automation, very rarely do I hear this side of the pain of the tester as well as the pain of the business being addressed together. So I'm so glad that you mentioned both, and that leads me to my next question, sort of. So, when you were thinking of this wonderful product called ACCELQ, what was the vision behind it, or what is the motivation behind ACCELQ, if I may put it that way?
So it's very much driven towards what we just talked about, right? In terms of the pains testers at a ground level go through, because unless we understand that pain, we can never bring the real value and efficiencies, right? Otherwise, it's all from the outside in standpoint as opposed to inside out, and unless you go inside out, you can never get to the core pains, and that's what we like to call it real world automation. So if you think about real world automation, right, I always like to share this little graphic. Let me see if I can share my screen to share a little graphic, right?
Yeah. Let me just add this. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, like we were talking about, the automation field is not new, right? Testing and automation have been around for almost 20 years. It's
Yeah.
not a field which has just come up in the past few years or so, right? And the record and playback, or scriptless, or whatever we call it, right, has also been around for almost as long as test automation has been around, which is
Yeah.
very interesting, right? So this whole concept of scriptless is not new,
Yeah.
right? And custom framework on the other end, in the past few years have also become, very prominent. But the reality of the situation, the outcome of the situation is both lie on one end of the spectrum, right? The record and playback are just way too superficial, right? No matter whether you put lipstick on a pig, right, it still remains a pig kind of thing. So there are a lot of recording tools out there
Yeah.
which have very marketing like gimmick in terms of whether you call it codeless, no code, or AI driven, but they all remain to have a heart of recording and playback, right, which is not real world automation. A real world tester will relate to what I'm talking about, right? A real world automation needs complex validations, it needs complex dynamic objects to be handled, it needs business rules that can be validated, iterations that can be performed, database calls, file calls. That's real world automation, right? And the moment you talk about real world automation, record and playback tools and recording tools and scriptless tools and no code tools just fall flat on their face, because they need customizations, right?
Yes.
They need programming languages, they need customizations, and they kind of then start defeating the purpose. If you think about it, if I'm purchasing a tool where I'm paying licenses for the whole reason of going no code, and if I have to do customizations, it's not real world anymore, right? On the other hand, we have our custom frameworks, which are obviously very powerful, which give us the flexibility, right? But every organization is just reinventing the wheel with custom frameworks, right? There is no seamless flow between process areas. What I mean by that is testing is not just automating a script, it's about a sound design, right?
Mhm.
Similar to building a bridge, if you don't have a sound design, the bridge is going to fall. Yes, you may be able to put a rope across and get across. Yes, you can easily automate a few scenarios with open source, finding a framework right off the bat from one of the open source areas. But it's not a scalable way, right? You're going to hit a ceiling very soon, and that's what we've seen in the industries, and that's why our automation rates have struggled, right, to 20% or so in the last survey that was done. And that's primarily because it's automation has been split between these two ends of the spectrum, right? And to answer your question finally, which is kind of what was the motivation behind ACCELQ, was to bring the best of both worlds together, right? Bring the power and flexibility of the custom framework, right, which is kind of one end of the spectrum, but then bring the no code, right, accessible to the whole world, easy to automate. Day one, you are doing automation, but you're doing it in a design friendly way, which is robust and
Yeah.
sustainable. So, that was kind of the philosophy behind ACCELQ, right? To have something more real world, but at the same time, have it completely no code driven, and being able to kind of sustain the automation, and scale it up so that you don't struggle at 20, 30, 40% automation. You can truly go 100% and shift left, more from an in-sprint standpoint.
Awesome, fantastic. And as you were saying this, there is this wonderful question that has come up. Codeless has, and this is from Kshitij, he says, codeless has been the most under-promised term in the automation space today. How do you envision to shatter it?
Very true, Kshitij. I couldn't agree more, right? And for all the reasons, we were talking about, right, which is, it's just always been too far from the real world, right? So the path ACCELQ took, and the way I see it shattering, actually, not just if we take a step back from automation, it's not just automation where it's breaking the barriers, right? If you see low code no code adoption is on the rise even in the application portfolio world. If you think back, right? Yeah, if you think back, organizations used to have, all kinds of homegrown applications, made be for their businesses, made be for their supporting their their overall IT infrastructure, right? Or whether it be for kind of getting automation within their operational processes, right? So if you think of kind of the first phase of ISV tools that came along, right? It started out with ERP tools, right? The SAPs of the world,
Yeah.
promised to bring the no code application portfolios, but it was a different time. The time was more to go with out of the box applications and start out. They needed years of implementation. They also needed a lot of customization in their own languages. So if you draw a parallel from those ERP tools to our automation tools, it was very similar. The
Yes.
first phase of these automation tools that came out also had their own custom scripting language. They
Yes.
also needed their own design frameworks, right? Similar to our first phase of our tools that replaced our homegrown tools, right?
Correct.
But now, if you see, in the digital, in the more transformation era, right? The newer wave of ERP tools are truly low code, no code, right? Whether we talk about Salesforce, whether we talk about MS Dynamics, right? Whether
Yeah.
we talk about banking applications, they have truly come to an area where you don't need custom scripting and custom programming language to to configure and customize the business rules and the workflows that an organization needs. So the implementation cycles are getting shorter, and the release timelines are getting much shorter. SAP
Absolutely.
used to get upgraded once in 2 years, and it used to be a huge, big boiling of the ocean upgrade. But now Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics sends 3 upgrades a year, right?
Yes.
Four
It's
upgrades a year. So on the same lines, if you see how our development landscape, how our technology is transforming, the same way codeless has to be brought on in our testing world. And that's what ACCELQ has pretty much done in its journey, right? We also started out at a certain point from a tool standpoint, but it has pretty much matured into a full-blown platform, bringing codeless not just to automating a script, but the reality is codeless has to be looked at across the process areas, right? Bringing that in management of the assets, bringing that to kind of automated test plan creations and so on, right?
absolutely. And as far as this whole concept of codeless tools is concerned, you talk about we've seen the same trend in the development world as well. I mean, and for something like, web design, earlier, you know, there were multiple ways of doing web design. Then, people looked at WordPress as one way of building your websites. And now there are these custom made, or there are these low code tools where you need to do very little programming. You just have to choose the template, choose your widgets, just place them, and then your website is ready. Something like Wix or Webflow. You know, and I see a similar trend being followed in the world of test automation.
Very, very true, Bridge, and that's such an important point, actually. In terms of what I really meant at heart of being automation, being sustainable and robust. That design friendliness, what you just talked about, lies at the heart of a robust and a sustainable automation, right? Because if you think at the example you just took, which was a great example, right, of content managed based web applications, right? The whole idea was to make it more scalable. That I have a 20-page web application, I want to go to 200 pages and not reinvent the wheel. I go and I want to be able to reuse my blocks, right? So the whole idea, whether it be on the development side or whether it be on the testing side, right? It being a sound design which is modular, which is reusable, right? Which can then help you scale up and sustain that automation, right? Because at the end of the day, if our applications are moving at a pace of 4 or 5 releases or a monthly release, how can automation catch up if it's not as stable and strong and sustainable as a design, right? So half of the magic is in automating, but the other half, right, is in being able to maintain that automation in a design friendly manner, right? So one of the areas how ACCELQ looked at it was not just put an AI tag on it just for the heck of it, right? uh, Truly look at each of these areas, whether it be test design, whether it be automation, whether it be maintenance, whether it be creation of test plans in an intelligent manner, understanding the application hotspot areas, right? Look at each design area, each process area of our testing lifecycle, and look at how AI and ML can really boost the efficiency across each process area. Because at the end of the day, what are we all looking for? Efficiency, right? I mean, that's the bottom line which we get out of it, right?
Right. So here I have a very interesting question,
Mhm.
and this comes from nobody other than Naveen. And Naveen, welcome to the show. So Naveen is asking you a very interesting question. He has heard that codeless automation is a scam. It's a marketing gimmick. Gimmick. Do you agree?
Yeah, the best way to answer that question, Naveen, is, I invite, everyone, including Naveen and everyone listening, to an upcoming hackathon in 2 weeks. Experience for yourself. Proof is in the pudding, right? I can't talk about all the other automation tools out there, right? But I can talk about ACCELQ, and and the leadership position we've grown is not is definitely something which many hundreds of Fortune 100 organizations rely on, right? But like I said, proof is in the pudding. I invite you all to take part in the hackathon, where you'll get hands-on access to the platform. You'll be able to actually tackle a challenge which is not just web UI automation related. You can go full stack, whether it be file interactions, databases, APIs, what have you, right? And get your hands in it. That's the best way to look at it. Don't take my word for it. Get your hands in there and experience it. The whole notion of codeless from ACCELQ standpoint. Again, I can only talk about ACCELQ. Is without writing a single line of code, you can automate a full stack automation in a more real world fashion, which is sustainable and robust, right? So yeah, that's probably the best way to tackle it.
All right. So you mentioned about test design, and as we learn more and more about AxelQ, I've heard about the design first approach. Would you like to elaborate a little more on that as to what the philosophy is behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go ahead and share my screen one more time, right? I think it's easier for folks to relate to things and kind of show it in action, right?
Maybe you might want to put it in presentation mode so that.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I'm not sharing a slide anymore.
okay, okay.
I'm actually flashing one of the screens of the platform itself, right? So
Mhm.
you can see my browser screen also, right, Bridge?
Yes, yes.
Okay, excellent. So, you know, if you simplify, test design, right, it's basically basically being understood in our world of test automation with frameworks, right? In various different ways, shapes and form, right? In the open source world, at the base of it, used to be page model framework, then kind of a lot of more advanced frameworks emerged, whether it be robot framework or protractor based frameworks, or other custom frameworks which folks and organizations built, right? In the no code world of tools, they've always been frameworks. But if you really look at what was the reason and why these frameworks were necessary, was at the end of the day, after all said and done, right, you want an automation that's that's modular, that's reusable, that breaks the components of your automation down to reusable blocks. And if we relate it to the development framework, the development methodology, right? Whether it be a dry methodology of don't repeat yourself, or componentizing your architecture, whether it be through microservices or kind of more object oriented programming concepts or what have you. At the heart of it, that's basically what a sound test design approach would mean, right? Which is creating modular blocks of automation which are reusable and easy to maintain. But what ACCELQ has really done is kind of taken that to the next level, right? That has always been there, right? But ACCELQ has kind of created a more behavior driven approach to a design framework. So it's not as much functional in nature, right? So if you see, we call this the universe, right? And every business process or every behavior kind of has its own flow. But at the end of the day, it's like a map, right? Think of it like a map which is getting smarter by the day, right? Which has its own routes and directions, and it's gaining all the different application flows, and how a user can go from one page to another page. So the way AccelQ has approached as design is more in a business process like fashion, so that you can relate to an end-to-end behavior that you're validating, but yet it's actually creating reusable and modular blocks of automation. And that gives you the ability to have a sound platform to go about designing and scaling up your automation. So what that means is, unlike other kind of marketing gimmick like tools which say, hey, I can automate it in a flash, we actually come about saying it in a different way. We say, hey, you know what, the first flow can take you an X amount of time to automate, because you're building the blocks of the pages, the user interactions, and so on. But the 10th flow, the 10th behavior you're automating and validating is going to take you 1/5 the time. The 100th flow is going to take you 1/15 the time, and so on, right? And the whole notion behind test design is, as I automate more, it should take me less time. And if there is a change that happens, let's suppose this page goes through a change, I shouldn't worry about my downstream impact. It should be an automated change management where basically all the downstream impacts of all the user interactions on that page, as well as everything that's related to a particular page or a particular user action, gets automatically updated. So basically my change management is automated, right? So the whole concept of test design lies, how faster can I automate when I scale up, and how easy it will be to maintain, right?
Yeah, and in a sense, you are using the power of modularity and reusability to its maximum extent to make it more powerful. Well, as we speak, there is some feedback pouring in about ACCELQ. And Manikumar here says that he's been watching automation tools for the past 10 years, and he believes that ACCELQ is true no code and a game changer and the right fit in the digital and DevOps environment.
Appreciate the kind words, Mani. And like I said, proof is in the pudding. Don't take my word for it. Get your hands in there. That's kind of the best way how you can realize the potential.
Yeah, and we at the test chat have also started working a little bit on trying to understand this a little more so that we can do a video experience report soon. So that's what we are also looking at. Here's one more feedback, and this is from Stephen, and he's an ACCELQ customer. So here's some customer feedback. As a new ACCELQ customer, I'm exposing our developers to embrace ACCELQ. They are reluctant to give up total control of the custom framework, but I believe ACCELQ will win them over. That
That's
is,
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Bridge.
Go ahead, please.
No. Finish your thought, please.
No. I was like, this is really inspiring actually, because if you really want, and there is a belief that the custom framework mindset of the developers will be won over by ACCELQ. So I really appreciate this from being a tester. I would like to see that happening. Yeah.
Totally, and it's an organizational change, right? The mindset can be a bit defensive when it comes to when it comes to no code tools, and there were a couple of comments which showed that that defensive approach, right? Which is fair, because when there is a change that comes, you have to and it's hard to also just take the belief in it, because the whole notion of scriptless tools has kind of created that perception, which is very true also in the outside world, right? And once you have the power and flexibility, like Stephen said, it's hard to give that up, right? You almost feel certain that you cannot achieve that power and flexibility because I don't have the ability to quickly write my little function and get what I need to get done. In this world of speed, I relate to the test engineers out there, and like Stephen said, right, I relate to that problem that, hey, why can't I just write a quick this, because that's at the heart of my approach, right? And the way ACCELQ has kind of approached this area, which is going to be critical for adoption, especially for test engineers who have gotten exposure and who have experience with more programming based automation, is to give them the same power and flexibility, not hold it from a vendor locking standpoint. And that's one of the biggest challenges in the no code world, right? Which is, hey, I'm a vendor, I want to lock the and I want to lock the extendability of the platform. But that's not how ACCELQ has approached it, right? If you actually go to academy.accelq.com, right, we've and when I said meeting the best of both worlds in the middle of the spectrum, it really, I really meant it, right? So there is a user extension concept where our end users can actually extend the platform, and because we are cloud based, it's a marketplace where everyone's pitching in, just like in the open source world, but everybody taking advantage of it doesn't have to reinvent the wheel and doesn't have to write all that kind of code and technique and increase to the technical debt of their automation, right? It's kind of managed in a more streamlined manner. So that user extension and our marketplace concept is hugely going to help the overall engineering community, and like Stephen said, hopefully they see the efficiency and we can win them over.
Right. So I have this question for you, and this has been, I've been thinking about it. That on one side, almost all customers, like Stephen as well, must be looking at faster time to market. That's one of the things that everyone wants. But on the other side, there is this thing with the developers, the testers, that I should be able to customize my test framework whenever I want to. Whenever something changes in the product, then I should be able to add that customization. So how does ACCELQ address both sides? You know, one is to maintain the faster time to market, and the other is to allow customization.
Absolutely. Very good question, Bridge. Let me share my screen. Again, I like to show things, and I get tired of hearing myself. So hopefully best way is to actually show things in action. So one of the ways AxelQ has approached, there are multiple aspects to extendability, right? In terms of whether it be customization on a business rule validation, or whether it be extendability on an overall technology stack, right? Today let's suppose you're validating against a database, which is Oracle, SQL, or something, right? And you need Postgre or Cosmos or CouchDB or MongoDB validation. So our constant evolvement of technology stack. So there is customizations which can come up to, whether it be technology stack, going across technology stacks, newer evolving technology stacks. It's Angular 3, it's Angular 5, there is shadow DOMs, there's lazy loading of objects. So all different aspects have different level of the extendability, right? So one aspect is to be able to add to technology stacks without depending on a vendor, but actually giving the power back to our end users. The other aspects of how AxelQ has gone about it is, if I go behind the scene on the automation itself, we've complemented the recording, which is the old school recording of automation, where you kind of click on an object and then you go about automating, what are the whether you want to click on a button, or enter the username, password, or what have you, right? Entering information in a form, or clicking on a radio button, or what have you. But the way AxelQ has gone about it is complementing this recording with a natural language editor, right? And what a natural language editor does is it gives you the ability to write automation, and when it's even recorded in a natural simple English fashion, right? And this natural language editor basically allows you to go over and above what the typical recording is. And that's really what I meant by kind of your action, yeah, your meeting of the best of the both worlds, right? Give me 1 second, let me just by the way, AxelQ has full blown change management, so it actually allows you to check in, check out. It has its own merging, branching, and so on, right? So you see right here, so you can just start writing what occurs to you. Let's suppose I want to make a database call. I just start typing data or DB, whatever occurs to me, right? So it's powered by IntelliSense. When you search Google, you don't really need to know exactly what you're searching. You kind of just start typing the phrase, and you know how it comes up to you, right? So this natural language editor allows you to do those customizations. Let's suppose I need to write a conditional validation, right? Let's suppose I need to introduce a wait time there, right? So sleep occurs to me. So I just start typing, let's make a sleep, right? And it'll tell me, here, you're trying to do a wait, right? I need to do an API call. I need to do virtualization in the middle of my automation, right? So no matter how complex it is, and this editor itself is extendable, right? So let's suppose I have a database, right? And here I see Postgre, Teradata, Informix, what have you. And I don't need any of these. I need to connect to a Cosmos DB for doing certain more complex business rule validations, jumping from my UI to a database. I can add a Cosmos DB in there, but at the end of the day, if I have 100 test engineers, they don't need to worry about how to reinvent the wheel of writing those customizations, right? You can do it more from a central standpoint, and then everybody gets advantage of it, so that your focus is on automation, right? Speed of automation and maintenance.
Excellent. Well, so this has got me really, really, really excited, and I want to know a little more about uh, the product. So, as I was reading about AxelQ, I have not had the opportunity yet to go and get my hands dirty. But as I was reading, I read about the capabilities it is bringing for the manual testers. Now, what was behind that idea, and what capabilities are we talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things I want to also bring up, right? There have been a lot of tools in our space, right? And unfortunately, the way this whole process area has evolved, Bridge, is, there have been automation tools which spit out scripts, right? Whether it be IDE based automation using open source libraries, or whether it be even no code scriptless platforms, all of them have always spit out scripts, right? And then you need to figure out how to run those scripts, how to manage those scripts, right? And that's why I call them tools and utilities, right?
Mhm.
Right, even to an extent of market leading tools which have come up prior to ACCELQ, they've all been in the tools and utility space. And the reason is because they don't really manage your test assets. And unless you manage your test assets, you cannot be efficient, right? You're not talking about the modular efficiency and the modularity that that design can bring, right? So the way AxleQ approaches it is, truly in a code, in a no code fashion, even for asset management, right? And the reason that becomes important is, under the same hood, we manage both manual and your automation tests. Unlike the old world, wherein you need a test management tool for manual testing, and then you need to create shell placeholders for automation, and then trigger those automation scripts from the shell placeholders, right? Whether you talk about the ALM tools of the world, right? Or even if you talk about the new Jira plugins, which have become popular lately, or some of the other test management tools out there, right? They're completely disconnected from the reality of automation. They're just shell placeholders, whether they are holding description steps or so, right? While, maybe I can quickly show a quick visual, right? I may not be able to do full justice to showcasing the tool, but let's see if I can show a quick visual, right? So under the same hood, if you see, right, you have automation and manual, and your manual is pretty much, a runway for automation, as opposed to how it used to be back in the days, right? So here my manual tests, have parameterization built in, have data driven testing built in, right? And they have direct relationship and traceability to how this is converted into automation, right? So the whole intent of doing testing in AxleQ, and the way we preach in terms of the approach of how you go about doing it is, create your manual as a runway to automation. Put in all the automation core concepts, whether it be data driving it, modularizing it, whether it be creating automated permutation combinations using AI based algorithms. All of that is now as part of your manual approach, which then directly translates and leads you into automation. So now you're completely challenging your traditional methods of going about doing testing, which is, hey, let's write test cases in a manual test management tool, and then let's bring specialists to figure out how to convert them into technical data and code, right? So that's kind of, philosophically, we've pretty much challenged it ground up, right, in terms of how manual testing can blend into automation, because in reality, that's the only way to scale up automation.
Well, that is quite impressive. Now, as I look at this tool more and more, I'm getting curious about what lies in future, and there is a very interesting question for you already. And this is again from Kshitij, and he's asking, I love the inclusiveness that you foresee with AxleQ. What would be the few game changer offerings you would soon see with AxleQ? Now, if you can spill the beans already, we are willing.
Absolutely. I'll give some clues. I'll give some clues, so everyone can kind of relate to that, right? So if you've followed a bit of AxleQ journey, in the past, right, one of the things you'll see how AxleQ has kind of transformed itself, right? Let me share my screen to actually showcase a couple things, right? So that tool, what I was talking about, right? That tool to platform journey, right? Has been we'll give you some clues on what lies and how we are approaching.
Guljeet, can you put this in presentation mode? Otherwise, it appears a little small.
Sure. How
Yeah,
about that?
this is good.
Okay, excellent. So if you see, over the years, the way ACCELQ itself has evolved, has really taken that tool to platform journey also, right? So
Right.
you'll see from a product line standpoint, we started out with web, maybe 6, 7 years back, right? The different product lines which have evolved and gotten added to the platform, have been around mobile native app, hybrid app testing, desktop testing, API testing, right? Full blown microservices and backend testing for your job based testing, right? As well as obviously like I was talking about, the manual testing, right? So if you see, there has been an increase in the breadth in terms of how the process areas are handled across technology stacks, right? Other than that, obviously the alignment with low code no code apps, has been something very special which ACCELQ has brought on to this market, right? Pretty game changing in terms of how the alignment to low code no code app goes, right? You've seen how ACCELQ has evolved around kind of inbuilt kind of version control, change management, kind of really bringing that asset management capability to the cloud. So think of, you working on a Excel spreadsheet on your computer as opposed to working on Google Sheets, which is more real time. You're not worrying about the versions of the sheets. Everything's being taken care of as part of the core platform, right? So that's kind of been the journey, and hopefully that will give you the clues both from a core platform standpoint,
Yeah.
see changes which are game changing in the bottom layers, right? As well as see them in the top layer, which is increasing the breadth of our process areas, right? Whether it be kind of going more across non-functional testing, and so on, right? So see a lot of action happening on both layers. Hopefully that gives you a little bit sneak peek into kind of what we are up to.
It does. It does. And now I'm sure all of us are a little more curious, and we would want to get get our hands dirty on this one as soon as possible. Now, while you're talking about all this, there is a very curious question here from Mohammed, and he's asking, "Will it take away SDET jobs?" What do you have to say
That's
about that?
that's a great question, and I always like to draw parallels to explore our thoughts, right? And it's all of us kind of will look at this in different ways. But if you draw certain parallels, right, just in our lifetime, right? If you think about, just go, for folks who are as old as you and I are, Bridge, right? If we go maybe 15 years back or so, we never had our smartphones. We weren't able to, you know do all the things we are able to do, in an automated fashion, right? You look at kind of the technology advancement, in our cars, right? We didn't have self-driving cars. We weren't able to put our cars on autopilot and kind of do what we can do today, right? Across the board, even in our IT space itself, right? A lot of shift happens in terms of our skill sets as we go along, but we just don't realize it. What we really end up doing is we all take that time and we invest it in something which will give us more efficiency, right? We are able to do five more things just because of the automation that has been brought onto our world, right? So draw that parallel and look at kind of how efficient it'll make our lives. So to an SDET, and this is coming from experience to a lot of organizations who have adopted ACCELQ and who used to have a lot of powerful force in their open source. Not even a single person would typically lose their job. It's just that their throughput, right? Their throughput would become three times, right? So think about it. You're now producing three times more than what you were producing, and your focus is on scaling up automation and on bigger and better things, which is to achieve continuous testing, align with CI/CD, right? focus on right being able to dynamically execute test environments, run hundreds of jobs in parallel, tear them down. So your focus area will change into more into speed, because earlier you didn't need as much speed. You didn't have 12 releases a year, right? So the way automation impacts our life is it just increases our throughput, right? Of course there are some aspects of automation which is balanced, but that's always a balance you all want to keep, right? But in reality it never takes away jobs, it just gives us more throughputs.
Yeah, I believe it'll make us a lot more efficient in whatever we are doing as automation engineers. So now there is a question from Jason Joshi. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct. Otherwise, I would just love to call you JJ. It sounds, very sophisticated. But this question has some background, so I'll first read out what he's written before that. I believe there is a lot of code that lies beneath the platform in order to provide a layer that allows us to write testing logic in a no code format. So then he says, suppose in the future new technology emerges which changes the way in which applications are coded. Then he comes up with his question and he's asking, will the existing ACCELQ still be able to handle testing such apps or low code that lies beneath the platform will have to be reinvented?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's kind of where that whole extendability of AxleQ comes in. So, absolutely, first off, there is definitely a lot of code because we are a platform, a software which has made whatever happen in terms of bringing no code testing, a designer, test management, controlling versions of your test assets, being able to do test planning in a AI based fashion, being able to kind of self heal your objects that break, being able to learn from application that that changes, right? Bringing that machine learning wherein application change is learned by AxleQ's engine to be able to more efficiently handle the changes that's happening, right? So a lot of intelligence has gone into underlying platform to be able to power it with that AI, which can then eventually bring in the efficiency we are talking about, right? And that makes the platform flexible enough to adopt to the changing technology landscape, right? And interestingly, one of the sweetest areas of sweetest spots of AxleQ is being able to go across technology stack in a end-to-end flow, without realizing whether I'm jumping from web to a mobile app to a database to a file to maybe an enterprise service bus call to an API, right? And that kind of tells you kind of jumping technology stacks and the flexibility that the platform can kind of bring. And like I keep saying, right? In fact, interestingly, now when I recall, the upcoming hackathon on November 13th, 14th is focused exactly on going across technology stacks. So it is a challenge for automation engineers to see that how you can go 5 technology stacks in a single flow of your validation, because that's real world, right? And that's the need of the hour because our applications are more componentized, right? How you can do that without kind of breaking the bank, so to say.
Yeah, so that particular thing makes me think about this, and I have this question popping up in my head. When you're talking about test automation, we all know and we all have realized over a period of time that we shouldn't be focusing only on one layer and saying, okay, we are testing on the UI and it should be good. We should be able to see what's under the hood and go beyond just UI testing and cut across the various layers and be able to test across the layers to achieve what we are trying to do. For example, a simple login screen has the data flowing through various layers, making API calls, going through the app code, doing validations for the credentials, and then giving you the response. It's not something that looks very simple that you just type your username, password, hit that button and you enter the next screen. No, there is a lot that is going on under the hood. So, uh,
Absolutely.
so how is ACCELQ helping us in actually, you know, testing through the various layers? Could you throw some light on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the key validations that we need to perform in today's technology era is, our applications are componentized, right? A lot of business logic lives in kind of microservices and APIs, right? A lot of enterprise service bus based kind of flows happen behind the scene when a business process is triggered from a UI, right? And a lot of validations need to happen, you know, through multi-channel, right? So web is not the only channel through which an interaction is happening, right? There are other channels where APIs can be impacting the downstream applications which are integrated, as well as, mobile and native app may have downstream impacts where users are also interacting with that, and so on, right? So the way Axel Q's can kind of handles it is that logic editor that I was showing is technology agnostic. It doesn't tie into a particular technology. It doesn't depend on a browser, right, to execute things. It doesn't depend only on backend calls, right? You can actually start typing touch or tap and just interact with a mobile native app screen. And in the right next sentence, you can load a browser and with a URL and go to the web. And that kind of allows you with that flexibility. In fact, not just that, a third line can open a green screen on a mainframe. And believe it or not, a lot of organizations for financial services and healthcare still live all their business critical PHI compliant data in mainframes.
Yep.
So the flexibility you need, and a lot of financial apps are still old Java based apps. Oracle EBS, which is one of the most prominent financial ERP apps, still has a lot of customers on the old school Java thick client based applications. So you need to be able to go across this technology stack to be able to truly validate an end to end business process, right?
Right. We've almost reached the top of the hour. So, will you be able to spend a few more minutes because we are getting some interesting questions?
Sure,
Is,
I
is,
do have a hard stop in couple minutes, so if we can take a last couple questions, that'd be great, and we'll be happy to take other questions, Bridge. And
all
and
right, all right, all right.
and
So
maybe
we
get back
will.
in this forum.
Okay, okay. Let me just ask you one last question, and that is from Ayan, and he's asking, how will it bring more value to the QA space compared to other products which are available in the market?
That's a great question, and I could probably talk about it all day. Right, Ayan? But in short, if I have to give you a quick minute answer, is it's all about scalability in automation. It's all about robustness. All the power of AI that AxelQ has brought on is think of it, the no code, the AI, any aspect I talked about from a functionality standpoint is all to do with the bottom line. And the bottom line is, can I create my automation faster, which is significantly lower and easy to maintain? And can I scale it up by going shifting left, by being able to do automation within my sprints, as well as by shifting right and aligning it to my continuous testing objectives, right? So that's the bottom line, and that's the difference AxelQ has made, and that's why in a period of 5 6 years we've gained a leadership status, right? If you look across the board, whether you look at our customers, Fortune 500 customers globally, or you look at foresters of the world, right, which have identified as leaders in this space, in this crowded space, especially lately, right? So we've proven to bring that efficiency in the market, and that's kind of why we've gained that status.
Awesome. So, yeah, so we have some more questions, but since you have a hard stop, we'll not hold you longer. Maybe we can pass on these questions to you, and you could address in some forum, maybe through LinkedIn conversation or in some other way.
Absolutely, Bridge, and we'll be happy to come back and chat with you anytime.
Oh yes, and we could have a round two of this one, which will be quite interesting because there's a lot to talk about, and you are doing your team is doing such an excellent job with the tool, and the lessons that I have learned. Number one, go and get your hands dirty, try it out yourself, do it, take part in the hackathon which is coming up, and number two, rather keep your eyes open and look for the new features which are coming up because that will answer a lot of our questions that we have currently.
Right
So,
on.
all right. Thank you so much for your time today, Guljeet. We will probably reach out to you for another session because
Sure.
this, there are questions. The questions in my head, there are questions in the audience. So we may have to find some more time with you. So
Sure.
we'll probably circle back on that one and see how soon we can accommodate that. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to the audience for the wonderful questions and for the great participation.
Thank you for having me, Bridge, again. Thank you. It was a great chat.
Awesome.
Take care.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye bye.